can't vote, but money can dictate policy. We talk a lot about moving forward and the issues that matter to us, right? And where do we stand? You know, there's been a lot of conversation this election cycle. Obviously, you know, since you guys have been watching me, I've talked a lot about, you know, Senator Sanders, the election, Secretary Clinton, what it is to be a Democrat. So we talk about what it is to be a Democrat. We talk about standing with the people. And there's a lot of commentary, Nora, about how everyone just needs to fall in line. Democrats need to unite and come together. But we don't all agree on, one, whether or not that's absolutely necessary, and two, whether or not what that actually looks like, right? It's a very interesting piece today. I know, interesting is my term of art. You gotta listen to the intonations of my voice to tell exactly if I think it's good interesting or bad interesting. This is just, it's interesting. The same time where we have Democrats trying to convince us of how progressive they are, of how for the people they are, of how we need to stand with them because they stand with us. We have an initiative, you know, an effort by Senator Obama's, 2008 flashbacks, by President Obama, you know, our current POTUS. There's an initiative by his administration to address issues with rising drug costs. And, you know, the Department of Health and Human Services is about to issue rules that would look at actually reducing and trying to get a control on drug prices. This has sent the drug lobbyists into a frenzy, okay? They have been banging down the doors, and we talk a lot about, too, about what is the big deal that certain interests donate money, right, to our elected officials, and what is the big deal? We put caps on how much money with people with certain priorities are able to donate and allocate and stuff. You know what, that doesn't mean anything. There's no evidence of quid pro quo. The fact that we have Republicans, House Republicans and House Democrats in a rage about the upcoming law, well, the upcoming rule changes, right? The fact that you know, both groups, they've written their own, but House Democrats were almost to the point where they were going to sign on to the Republican letter, which sought to stop it completely in its tracks. Now, why would they do that, right? Our elected officials are supposed to be for us. They represent us. They're supposed to be about the people, you know, for the people, yada, 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 right? One person, one vote. We vote just like everyone else. It matters. Money in politics does not matter. Money in politics does not matter is what people who get money for their politics say to you to convince you that you should vote for them because they need you to vote. Because the money can't vote, but money can dictate policy. Let's just be real, right? So this rule, there tons of people have expressed their concern because the Democrat letter to the president has asked for basically for things to be softened, right? Like they're responding to pressure from big pharma, from oncology lobbyists. Yeah, this is a prime example of how big money in politics is problematic because we've seen, you know, numerous mentions, not just this election cycle, but just in general about the rising costs of prescription drugs, the rising costs of healthcare overall. I mean, this is part of the battle that Bernie Sanders is saying we need to fight. And it's centered, this, even though we're talking about prescription drug costs, right, and legislation, rules that would actually help the average American, it's deep in campaign finance reform and getting big money out of politics. Now, I didn't actually intend on talking about this tonight, but we had a piece written by one of our own with the Progressive Army, Salam Marcos, and he was talking about, took it from the vantage point of if we did actually, you know, were to negotiate, right? Because we've been talking a lot about how people need to earn our vote. Come get my vote. You know, I've listened to the Fight for 15 protests and stuff. Come get my vote has been, you know, the chant. As Black voters, we say it all the time. People need to earn our vote. You need to put, you know, you got to respect us. You got to earn it. You got to work for it. But what we see happening is that, okay, we say that to people and they pay lip service to us, but then we ineffectually, you know, bring in people into office who, yeah, they know the game. Yeah, they know what to say. They know how to play the dance fuzz. But ultimately, when you look at their decision making, what they're doing, it's like soft, and they're really kowtowing down to their donors, right? Their base. So when we look at an issue like this where the Democrats, and on the one hand, you can say, oh, they're trying to make a move preemptively because the Republican letter, it just flat out, you can't do this, don't do this, this is not right, this is not good. You know, supposedly they're worried about unintended, they're always worried about unintended, you know, effects to the people, when really this is an issue that you're cutting into somebody's profit margin. They're upset, they don't want you to do it, case closed. So, you know, we talk about the legacy of President Obama a lot in this election cycle. The Democratic Party pretends to be so concerned about protecting what he has done. We've already seen the DNC under Debbie Wasserman Schultz rescind, you know, rules against, you know, big money from lobbyists within the party fundraising mechanism, right? They're basically selling off pieces of the convention in party membership and leadership to the highest bidders is effectively what's happening in this cycle. So I really think that when we're having these conversations going forward about earning the vote, about why is it that, you know, you people over there are so, you know, insistent on infighting. This is not infighting. We're trying to keep the process honest, right? We are trying to make sure that one person, one vote actually means one person, one vote, and not one person, one vote. But if you make over a certain amount of money, you know, you get to put your finger on the scale, so to speak. But that's not okay. So I am trying, I thought I had pulled up Salam's article from earlier, but I'll definitely get it dropped in for you guys a little bit later. But basically, the premise is just that it's an open letter to Secretary Clinton is the point that he's writing from. And it's pretty much, I was trying to see if I could find it real quick to read it to you guys, but it was, the basic premise is just that, you know, working from this idea that we have to come together around, you know, whoever the actual nominee is. So yeah, it's actually, I don't think he actually published it on the site yet. I think he just sent it to us as a pre-read, but it's a great read. So definitely when it's up, you got to look for it. Okay. But it's very respectful. You know, I know that we have Burn Your Bus, we have Unite Blue, but at the same time, like at the end of the day, we all want a better tomorrow, right? And we need to come together and figure out how do we get from point A to point B and beyond. I do know that I know a lot of us have very strong feelings, but campaign finance reform, we can talk to her blue in the face about how it doesn't matter, it doesn't affect the vote. But honestly, when you look at this article, when you look at what's happening right now, when you have Democrats, this is not the first time Democrats have done this, like kind of like, oh, I can't back up Obama because that's, you know, my district's gonna be mad at me. We can't say that we stick to certain values and beliefs. We can't say that we're proud of the legacy and that we're supporting something when there's something that's so important, like fighting the abusive practices and finances involved with the high cost of prescription drug medication. You know, in the work I do, I see people who, but for the fact that they can't afford their medication, they would be able-bodied individuals out there working in the job market, right? I see tons of people all the time who, you know, they can't afford their medication for diabetes and they're unnecessarily going to the emergency room. Well, we have the ACA, you know what? I keep telling y'all, the ACA is definitely an improvement of what existed before. It has made it possible for a lot of people, but there's still many folks, my mother is one of them, who despite working full time, who's despite being a quote unquote, you know, as you know, people would say, like she works, she's engaged, she's intelligent, you know what I'm saying? She's in the system, but what's available to her is just not affordable. It is not affordable. It is cheaper for her to go and pay out of pocket when she needs to go see a doctor and just pray, really, like you just pray that you don't get sick and there's not some other need for it. The same thing with the prescriptions. You know, people just hope they can get through it without this medication, or people are cutting their pills in half. There's all types of stuff that is still going on, and ignoring it and saying, oh, but we passed this, this is great, this is good enough. It's not good enough. It really is not good enough. Americans are crushed with the burden of healthcare today, and we really cannot afford to continue disregarding it because we're too afraid to upset the people with the big dollars. Like, because that's what ultimately it boils down to. The next time somebody says, oh, but that does not have anything to do with the way I vote or make decisions, malarkey. I'm sure you can Google quite a few articles and instances where decisions are being made based on what lobbyists want and not what's based on the good of anyone's jurisdiction. Like, seriously. Or they're afraid that they're going to get primaried for somebody from the Tea Party. We don't. I can't elect people who are going to go into Washington and be fearful. And I'm sure, in thinking about what you need to do, you might feel the same way.